So Karen, I'll have you take over here now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I have the distinct pleasure to talk to you today and introduce a great group of young adults. We call them Leaders in Training here in Roseville area schools. And the group with us tonight are Leaders in Training alumni, which means that they have been with us, some of them up to 6 years, and they're now all college students. These young people every day own my heart, but most importantly, they have my respect as leaders. The kinds of work that they have done in the past 6 years, the leadership that they have provided, the training they have provided is awesome. They've served over 250 Roseville area students. They have spoken to groups 1,000 to 2,000. They have been called by Target Corporation to come and talk with their leadership about young adults and about how they might form some kinds of partnerships and working together. They have provided professional training to all of our staff here in Roseville area schools, back to school. They've spoken at several state conferences. These young people have just grown up over the time. And the coolest piece about it is, on an average, when these students were in school with us, they each gave 750 service hours, which I think is absolutely unbelievable. And they have grown every step of the way. I still remember meeting some of them their first couple of weeks in the Leaders in Training program. They're really fortunate to have a wonderful advisor, Mr. J, or Jamie Johnson. He has such passion and he really knows how to reach out and help mentor. Sometimes we get in the mold that as adults, we think we're telling students what they need to do. We're not exploring together about the opportunities in leadership development. So right now I'd like to turn it over to Jamie Johnson and our Leaders in Training.
Thanks, Karen. Welcome. Thank you, Optimist community, for having us. I really mean that. I've been with you all for a few years now. And I just really want to, we have a saying that we've used. When you want to succeed as much as you want to breathe, then you'll become successful. And in 2014, I was hired by Karen to do a part-time after-school groups and small clubs. And I saw a lot of basketball clubs and a lot of art clubs, but I didn't see any leadership development clubs. And so we started two after-school leadership clubs. One of them was called Black Girls Rock, and the other one was called Fight Club Project. Both of them were dealing with leadership development and how to grow your dreams and your vision. And they were at 7th grade at the time. And the students that you're going to hear before you were just 7 of those. And as the program grew, all of a sudden we said, you know what, there was this passion that the students had with me. This wasn't something that I just, from a youth development worker came and said, this is what we're going to do. These students helped build this program because I didn't have the luxury of having any full-time or part-time adult help. So in order to kind of reach the masses, I had to really crock-pot leaders and really spend a lot of time with them. And as we developed the leader within them, meaning personal development, in personal development, we define as the belief that you're worth the time, energy, and effort needed in order to develop yourself. So as they developed the leader within in their 7th and 8th grade years, in their 9th grade years, they were so passionate about this program. They said, Mr. J, let's go to different schools and start developing younger leaders in training. So they were called leadership and training coaches. And so they gave up football, dance, numerous other activities, and developed with me, committed to me full-time their time, 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. And just to clarify Karen's point, it was 750 hours per year per student. So they gave over 750 hours of volunteer time developing the leaders around them, going to 6 different schools in our school district and creating this LIT program and developing smaller groups. And we created this thing called the IT Factor. And what they're going to share with you today is some of the values that we've had over the years that, and we believe we have it. There's some organizations that have it and there's some that don't. We believe we have this thing called the it factor. And just to put this in perspective, 100% of them now have graduated and gone on to college. 80% of them have gotten $250,000 given to their college education. And you know what they still do? They still give their time giving back to developing the second inner circle cohort every Monday and throughout the week in their busy schedule to still invest in leaders because they understand that leadership is crock-potted. So without further ado, they're going to bring passion and energy. I hope you take notes. And this is from them. So I'd like to introduce Mishi Ford. She's one of our wonderful women of color. And this little side note, our women of color completely help devise the foundation of this program. We celebrate our women, we cheer on our women, and particularly I honor our women of color. As a white brother, I honor our women of color. And thank you for everything you've done. So further ado, Mishi Ford, rock the house, girl, okay?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I would like to introduce the It Factor to you all today. Just thank you guys. Just take a moment to thank you guys for even being here today. Like, I really appreciate it. Listening to each and every one of us. So yeah, I'm just going to jump straight into it. The It Factor. The It Factor can be difficult to define, but it lives in a divine place in your heart inside. This is an it like no other. This it, you can feel it when you walk inside a room. The instant moment of a blossom bloom from a planted seed, planted from the root of our beloved community. It's a community that you never want to leave. It's a feeling that makes you feel revived and relieved. Free of not feeling good enough. Free of feeling like you can't make a difference in this world full of hurting hearts. Free of feeling like you are stuck in emotionally unhealthy leadership. And free of thinking you don't have it. The it factor isn't just an external principle, but an internal conviction filled by the passion and desire to be and do more. Having it is about being a part of something bigger than you. Everyone has the potential to have it. Let me repeat that. Everyone, every single one of you guys in this conference right now has the potential to have it. It is in you, but only if you work on getting it through finding your passion, developing a relationship with yourself and with others, and working on your emotionally healthy leadership. I want you to pause and listen to this. I want you to really stop and think about what I'm saying in these big questions. Whether you're male or female, young or old, rich or poor, it doesn't matter. These questions will stick with you. So I'm gonna ask, do you have the it factor in your life? Do you have it in your teams? Do you have it in your organization? Do you believe the Optimist Club have it? Or are we just faking it? Because when you have it, the it factor in your life, in your teams, in your family, in your friendships, in your organization, it changes every single thing for the good. But unfortunately, so many leaders do not have it. The it factor is missing. And when the it factor is missing apathy, ineffectiveness, staleness, unhealthiness, demotivation, the lack of passion, the lack of leadership, it starts to come out of the spirit of your leadership. So that is why the it factor is essential and very critical. So today we're going to have a lot of the young adults here today speak about the it factor in their lives. And I want to start by introducing Talia, who's going to talk about one of the first it factors in our LIT community. So I want you guys to give her a round of applause, and yeah, she'll get started for you guys.
Hi everyone, thank you all so much for coming and for having me today. I really appreciate seeing your beautiful faces. And all right, so I'm gonna get started with the first it factor. So one of our it factor values is passion, because we believe that passion is what fuels your life and what allows you to fulfill your potential. Passion. What is passion? Passion is a feeling that drives us to want to achieve. When we're passionate about something, there is an excitement within us. Our demeanor changes. We think about our passion often, and we want to share our passion with others. So your it is most likely your passion in life. But how do you get to a place where you can accept your passion or your it? Today, I'm going to speak about the traps that we fall into in pursuing passion and how to allow ourselves to be vulnerable with our passion and begin to work on not wasting our passions. As a community and leaders in training, or LIT, we have all witnessed one another take the journey of discovering our passions. We've watched each other deal with all the obstacles and fall into all the traps that I'll be talking about today. But we had to experience those challenges to come with discovering our passion in order to get it. And we've grown immensely because of it. So today, I'm going to be focusing on the 5 passion traps. Number 1, motivation or lack thereof. So the obstacle of motivation is an obstacle that I have personally faced when exploring my passions. And I have faced this obstacle many, many times. I find myself wanting to feel a specific emotion that causes me to want to move and to start achieving my passion. So let me give you an example. One passion of mine is writing. I love to write, and I would love to write even just one book. I have all these visions in my head of what this book would look like, the characters, the plot, and everything. But the book hasn't been written yet because I often lack the motivation to even get started. Okay, so how do we overcome this obstacle of motivation? Well, here is some of the best advice that I have ever received when it comes to motivation. And trust me, I've watched a lot of TED Talks, I've talked to a lot of people, and this advice actually came from Mr. J in the LIT program. He told me that the idea of motivation often holds us back from pursuing our passions. I'll say it again. The idea of motivation often holds us back from pursuing our passion. We end up wasting our passion because we're waiting to feel motivated and to go after them. But rather, the key to getting over this so-called need for motivation is to just do it. Okay, so now I call this thought process the Nike thought process. And when I'm facing the obstacle of motivation, I often remind myself, Nike, just do it. And you'll find that when you get over the idea that you must feel motivated to do something, you start to allow yourself to go after your passions. And it sounds super simple because it is, but it's also very, very effective. All right, so number 2, the second passion trap is making time. Many of us live our lives on a schedule. And there are those of us who claim that we go with the flow, that we don't live our lives on a schedule. But what we all have in common, regardless of how you view time, is that we still don't have enough, right? That's something all of us have said at one point. And those who live their lives on schedules have too much going on to squeeze anything out in. And the go with the flowers end up wasting their time or losing their time. What we do is make excuses in the name of time. But time is truly an indicator of our priorities. What we put our time towards is what our priorities are. It's not what we want them to be. So how do we make time for passion? How does passion become a priority? The best way to make passion a priority is to be intentional and to make the time. Stop making the excuse that you don't have time because you do. Instead, choose a day or days in your week and devote a certain amount of time to exploring and starting to fulfill your passions. This can be 15 minutes, this can be 30 minutes, or an hour or more. In LIT, we call this 15 minutes of fulfillment, 30 minutes of thriving, or an hour of power. Creating this habit and starting small will make passion a priority. And I know 15 minutes and 30 minutes doesn't sound like that much time. And a lot of the times we'll tell ourselves that, well, 15 minutes of my time isn't really going to change my life. But if we keep having that mindset, that is what stops us from having passion. If you begin to start small, you take that 15 minutes and you work on building your passion, you'll realize that your life starts having passion on a daily basis. All right, so the third and fourth passion trap. The third passion trap is self-doubt, and the fourth one is waiting for the perfect condition. We call this the waiting game. When it comes to having it, a trap that we fall into is having passion in our lives is that we doubt ourselves, and we wait for the perfect condition to come along. Now, I'm here to tell you that it is normal to have self-doubt. Trust me, each of us have experienced it in one point or another, and most of us probably experience it on a daily basis. But I'm also here to tell you that doubting yourself gets you nowhere. Okay? Doubting yourself gets you absolutely nowhere. And no, I actually want you to all think about that for a moment. I want you to think about how much passion is being wasted and how many things you stop yourself from achieving by doubting yourself. What we worry about with self-doubt is failure. But at least when you fail, you move. At least when you fail, you give yourself the grace to try something new and to learn from that experience. Self-doubt gets you nowhere, but your passions will take you to places that you never thought were possible. Passionate people do not run from self-doubt. Rather, they engage it and they challenge it. All right. Now, what about waiting for the perfect condition? I hate to break it to you, but it honestly doesn't exist. And for those of you thinking, well, that's not necessarily true, it really doesn't matter because life is short. And by not going after your passions now, you take the risk of never going after them. And that risk is incredibly, incredibly high. And if you're being honest, the only reason you're waiting for the perfect condition is because you have self-doubt. So when it comes to passion, the perfect condition is every day. It's today, tomorrow, and it's all the days after. And the fifth and last passion trap is having no vision. In LIT, we define vision as a clear mental picture of what could be, fueled by the conviction of what should be. So then what is the issue with having no vision? Well, we won't go very far if we don't know where we're going. When we think of the path of success, there is an end goal. And as you experience the journey of exploring your passion, you should be able to visualize that end goal. When we don't have a vision of our passion, it's easy to give up, since we're not really giving up on anything because there was nothing there to begin with. Having no vision really means making the decision to choose the path of settling. So what's the solution? The solution is very simple. Ask yourself, what is my passion? And then don't stop there. Really explore what you're passionate about. Ask others what they see that you're passionate about and what they view as your strengths. Then take all of that information and create a goal. Create a mental picture of what fulfilling that passion looks like to you. Now you have a vision and you can choose the path of passion. All right, so I walked you through the 5 passion traps: motivation, time, self-doubt, the perfect condition, and vision. And I talked about these traps not to scare you or to make you feel bad about where you're at in living a passionate life, but to encourage you that your passion is more than possible. And the way to get it is to face these passion traps head on. Passion isn't always easy, but it is life-changing in the best way. And lastly, if you want to have passion, get around people who have passion. I cannot stress how important this is enough. Surround yourself with passionate people if you want a passionate life. So I'm going to give you 2 questions to think about when it comes to passion. And I hope that you have something around you so you can write this down, okay? Because I'm not saying all these words so that you can just let them leave your mind. I want you to really hear me on this. The first question is, which one of these obstacles do you identify with? And how and where do they appear in your life? And the second one is, what do you need to take to get on the road of passion? What step do you need to take to get on the road of passion? So to add to our discussion and what it means to have it, Jose and Yusuf have an amazing message that does a great job exploring the importance of relationships that you surround yourself with. Let's give it up for Jose and Yusuf.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yusuf, and this is my best friend, Jose, over here. We have a lot of names for our friendship. You know, we've got Bert and Ernie, you know, from Elmo. We've got Mr. J calls us Laurel and Hardy, but I don't know. I have no idea who those are. I wouldn't know. And the most important one, though, that I think is probably the most accurate is Buzz and Woody. Jose's Buzz and I'm Woody, because I've got little skinny figure to me. But anyways, let's get right into it then.
All right, so we have heard Talia talk about how passion is necessary in order to have the it factor. We also believe that the it factor can only develop if we choose wisely our relationships and who we spend our time around. Leaders with the it factor in their relationships know how to build and maintain healthy relationships.
With that being said, we are going to give you a leadership model called the 360-degree relationship model. Ooh, This is a model that our mentor, Mr. J, uses in his own leadership and something that me and Jose have practiced and preached as well. Now, the first leadership principle is relationally leading above. When I say relationally leading above, I'm not talking about people who have influence over every area of my life, but maybe they just have a positional leadership position over me. Some examples of these people could be bosses, parents, relatives. When you are not in a position of leadership, that does not mean that you are still not leading. You guys got to hear me when I say, even when you are under someone, you can still be leading that person. Because remember, leadership is influence. And if leadership is influence, our job then is to have relational influence with those above us. You might be thinking, well, Yusuf, what do you mean? What do you mean? They have the position over me. How could I lead them? Well, let me give you a personal example from my life. Growing up, my father, he was very abusive. He was abusive emotionally, abusive physically, and abusive spiritually in my household. He physically abused my mother and me, and he brought a lot of pain on my household. I have probably 50 examples, 50, of the hurt that I've experienced, but let me just tell you one. In 3rd grade, I remember seeing my father hit my mom for the first time, and I saw my mom's arm bruise, and it broke me. Now, I tell you this because my dad is a great example of what I'm talking about. My father is someone who is above me positionally, but that means absolutely nothing when it comes to leading relationally and having the it factor in your relationships. In fact, you know what I did? I called him up and set up a time where we could talk. I let him know how I felt, and I told him that I forgave him, even though he did not apologize or anything of the sort. I took relational responsibility, and I was leading above me. We learn in LIT all the time that what matters in life is not what happens to you, it's what happens in you that truly matters. Now, this is important because if I did not have the it factor, I would have probably said, man, screw my dad. Whatever, he was a terrible father, blah, 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 blah. But the relational leader says, I have to be optimistic. I have to forgive him. I have to forgive him for no one else other than myself. Again, whether he apologizes or does not. I've even gotten to a point in my growth where I empathize because his dad and mom were even worse, and they treated him even worse than he did to me. I want you all to hear me clearly when I say this, because if you're going to be a leader who has the it factor in your relationships, you need to be able to forgive the people who are influentially and positionally above you, because you will lose it if you cannot forgive them. Whether that is forgiving a boss, a parent, a relative, or any other leader who has hurt you. And I know I'm speaking to someone here today who needs to forgive those people, because you have to trust me when I say that forgiveness will set you free from a lot of unnecessary baggage. Lead and forgive the people above you if you want the it factor in your relationships. Now, Jose will give our second relational principle.
So to recap, when we're talking about the 360-degree leadership, Yusuf just talked about leading above. The second relational principle that I'm going to be talking about is leading across. Learning to choose a good inner circle is the key to the it factor. Why? Because those closest to you determine your potential. And I'm going to share my story in leading across in the journey I took on shifting my inner circle and the breakthroughs it took to lead well across. So I was in a deep pit when my dad was ripped away from the home about 4 years ago by ICE. One of the biggest things I realized as soon as things began to get worse was that my inner circle was the very thing that crumbled around me. And I simply began to people please, attach myself to the wrong people, and was dysfunctionally loyal to the wrong people. Being codependent towards certain people is what brought me down into those places. Why? Because once again, leading across is the key, is key, but because the people that are in your inner circle and who is feeding your life is what it takes to have the it factor. And I was beginning to hang around the wrong people, and to be honest, I was doing many things that I wasn't proud of, and it wasn't the way I wanted my life to go. And the first step in all of this is deciding and declaring that you want to do everything in your power that it takes to have the it factor in your relationships. It's such a key point because it fuels your potential, it kickstarts your potential, and it keeps you convicted about the decisions you are making and your own behavior. And the LIT program helped me get out of that place. And it wasn't that they would say things to make me feel better, but they would show me that we all have our pain and that we all suffer in the ways that we do, but that we are continuing to be here not only for each other, but for the wellness of ourselves. They showed me that if we're all learning and growing in our ways and through our pain, then I can certainly do that as well. And that's what it looks like to have the it factor. That's what it looks like to lead across. The importance of our environment defines and shapes the purpose of our lives. We physically cannot thrive as people with the wrong crowd, let alone the crowd who does not move anywhere in their purpose to lead. If I had not realized that, I would have probably died to certain circumstances, committed suicide, or in many other things that I was doing that could have led down the wrong path. And it sounds like a morbid thing to say about myself, but that's where I was leading myself down. Our pain does not define us, as people have said. The people we choose to be around will certainly define how we have the it factor. And now we'll go right back to Yusuf, and he will be giving us the third relational leadership principle.
Now, we've talked about relational leading above. We've talked about relational leading across. Now, these last two are going to be really short, but they're powerful. The third leadership principle is relational leading below. Now, we've talked, relational leading below doesn't mean less than. It might just mean that you have positional leadership over them. Learning to serve and generously give to those who are below me because they may not have the wisdom and experience that I have is relationally leading below. It's about building intentional relationships with those people and mentoring them. Everyone, and when I say everyone, I mean everyone needs a mentor. And I'm super grateful and lucky to have an amazing mentor and friend in Mr. J. I know he won't speak about like this, about himself, but he's helped me just through so many things. When I was dealing with my father, when I was feeling lonely, depressed, anxious, when I was at my lowest and when I was at my highest, and I got my full ride scholarship just recently. He was there with me through it all. And I just want to take this time to say I love and appreciate you so much, Mr. J. I really want you to know that. As a leader, though, I can't help to think about the people who aren't as lucky as I am. People who don't have a mentor to help them in different areas of their life. People who are depressed, people who are anxious, people who are alone. I love that John Maxwell says this. He says, the measure of a leader is not the number of people who serve him, but the number of people he serves. In our community, we completely agree with John Maxwell, and we have lived this out in our program. I mean, Karen and Mr. J were talking about this, but every LIT that you see here has donated 750 hours of volunteering each year. And why do we do that? Why do we believe in that? Because we value bending the knee and serving below us. Early in LIT, I've learned that mentoring someone is super beneficial for both the mentor and mentee. Before COVID and the pandemic, I mentored this young lady and saw how much it meant to her. And I did not do much. All I did was I listened to her, I built a friendship with her, and then occasionally I shared any advice that I've learned from my life. Now, again, in 360-degree leadership, we talk about leading above, we talk about leading across, but we are now talking about leading below, where we are serving, bending the knee, and intentionally adding value to people's lives by serving them. This is what I like to call Jesus leadership. Now, Jose will give us our final leadership principle.
So the fourth and final relational principle, once again, we talked about leading above, across, and below. And the final one is within. And I have just a couple questions when it comes to leading yourself. And here they go. Do you lead yourself well? Do you love yourself well? Are you kind to yourself? Do you invest in yourself? And how well do you treat yourself in your own inner dialogue? Let me finish off with this because this is really short. Personal development is the belief that you are worth the time, energy, and effort needed in order to develop yourself by any means necessary. And I'm going to say that again. Personal development is the belief that you are worth the time, energy, and effort needed in order to develop yourself by any means necessary. Your relationship to you is crucial when it comes to the it factor. It is crucial, and you won't be able to have the it factor if you don't fix your relationship with you or don't help work on it. Thank you.
Now I would like to introduce two wonderful, amazing women, Esther and April.
All right, so this it factor is kind of a heavy one. It's one that wasn't easy for us as an LIT community to go through. I know for a fact that this one is not discriminatory of no one. Teens struggle with this, families struggle with this, and leaders struggle with this. When Mr. J brought this one up to me, even I didn't want to deal with it. But it's an important one to deal with because it really does affect your it factor. So part of having the it factor is engaging your emotionally healthy leadership. And I'll say that again. Part of having the it factor is engaging your emotionally healthy leadership. What does that look like? Well, that looks like engaging your family pathological traits. And what does that mean?
Let me describe it this way. From as young as an infant, we encounter our first teacher, our parents. What they model for us is what we end up picking and adopting as we go through life. But there are certain traits that stick with us that can hinder our ability to have it.
So why is your it so important? Well, because it can affect your current state of leadership. It doesn't matter if you're young or old, undealt with dysfunctional family pathologies can hurt your leadership, whether we're in our 20s, or in our 60s. And that is why it's important to identify what are some unhealthy traits, behaviors, and attitudes that we need to address.
The first example that can affect your it factor within your family pathology is
dictating leadership. It really does hurt your it factor. Let me ask you a question. Do you remember growing up and having experienced your parent not allowing you to have a say when it comes to decisions that involve you? This is an example of family dictatorship. In these situations, the elder is always right. I've experienced this personally when it comes to my parents involving me in large and small scale decisions. I've never really had the freedom to say how I feel in these situations, and it can feel like my voice is not being heard. And to put this on an even broader scale for you, this is commonly seen in leadership positions, whether that be in the church or within cultural groups. Oftentimes, women are not valued. I firsthand experienced this in an area that I'm really passionate about, which is music. I often felt put down in the church, and I felt really diminished for the work that I was doing. But in other places, people really did believe in me. They believed that I had it and nourished my strengths. And in LIT, the women were believed in. And that is why today you see the product of women leadership, because women of color helped build this LIT program. As we move on to the next point, remember this. Undealt with family dysfunction affects our leadership. The second example is
suppression. This looks like avoidance when it comes to talking about problems to people outside of the family. This can also look like keeping family situations within the circle. It can create feelings of guilt or shame when the family is confronted with conflict. And ultimately, it can create a lack of emotional and physical affection. For example, some of you have been on teams in your organizations that have leaders who refuse to deal with conflict. They avoid it. It hurts the leader, it hurts the team, and it hurts the organization. And some of you have come from families who have never dealt with these issues. Now you are modeling the same behavior in your family, friends, and now in your organization. Once again, dysfunctional family pathologies affect our current state of leadership. The third example is
gender roles. Traditional gender roles are often implemented in the family growing up. It's the norm. But when they get dysfunctional is when it becomes something that defines you by your masculinity or your femininity. This can cause us to grow up feeling like in our leadership roles, we have to fit into a mold of what a woman or a man should look like. Mr. J always poses this question to us, and he says, why don't we see more women, or specifically more women of color in leadership roles? Think about that. The fourth example is
the people pleaser. This looks like kids having to emulate certain roles for approval from their parents. There's the caregiver, the hero, the golden child, the straight A child, and many other roles that children use to fit into their family. All of these roles can create a dysfunctional family dynamic. As John C. Maxwell says, you can't lead people if you codependently need people. Let me repeat that. You cannot lead people if you codependently need people. And lastly, the fifth example is
addiction. This includes drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography, and gambling. All of these behaviors are addiction behavior. Addiction behavior in families can have major effects on the next generation. Oftentimes, the parent will introduce and model unhealthy behavioral addiction patterns. This type of leadership modeling causes chaos and trauma in the home. And unfortunately, once again, people carry that into their adult leadership roles. And for example, the addiction rate to pornography in men over 40 years old is at an all-time high. Pornography addiction hurts the soul and the heart of your leadership. Another example of addiction behavior would be the amount of leaders who are struggling with alcoholism. It's slowly killing themselves and others from the inside out. So here's one big question that you have to ask yourself. Are you asking for help? In LIT, one thing that we always encourage each other to do is to ask for help. Don't be ashamed. If you're hurting, ask for help. Not one of us, not two of us, none of us are above asking for help.
As we conclude, there is one more crucial point that we have to make about dealing with family dysfunction. In order to have it, there needs to be a commitment to self-forgiveness and the forgiveness of others who have hurt you. There also needs to be a commitment to recognizing dysfunctional behavioral traits and developing patience with yourself in this process. Remember, these traits, behaviors, and attitudes are issues that have been dealt with for generations. It is important to know that this major step you are taking in being the first person to break that dysfunctional generational cycle. So here are some questions that Esther and I would like you to consider. What family pathological traits, behaviors, or attitudes do you need to forgive in your family?
What family pathological traits do you still carry out daily? What are some conscious or unconscious things that you are aware or unaware of?
In the role of your family, friends, and work, do you lead an emotionally healthy leadership life? Are you working on stuff beneath the surface of your life? Think about the 5 points we touched on today. You need to work on dictating leadership, suppression, unhealthy gender role expectations, being a people pleaser, or addiction behavior.
And with that, we'll pass it back over to Mr. J.
Can we give them a hand? Thank you all so much. I just want to put this, if you guys can visualize this for a moment. I just talked to Karen this morning. We were just checking in and connecting. And when it comes to developing leaders, we have to look at not microwaving leaders, particularly young leaders. You have to crockpot them. You have to spend time. If we want the next generation to be all that they can be in leadership development, you have to crockpot leaders. If you can visualize for a moment these guys going into Emmett D. Williams, Roseville Area High School, Rams Middle School, Central Park, Harambe, and Brimhall. For 6 years, they came, and it wasn't Mr. J coming in being a leadership guru. I invested in them, and we're probably missing like 13 more. And then what they did was have small groups. Apo would have her small group of young ladies that she would, exactly what you're listening today. Jose would do it, Yusuf would do it, Mishi would do it, Talia would do it, Esther would do it. And they would have these small groups, and it was just multiplying, developing leaders. Instead of addition, me going in one at a time, one at a time. One of our LIT misconception always was that people always felt like, wow, there was only 20 LITs. I'm going, no, that's so wrong. There's 20 LITs that were the inner circle team, but then they went out and developed other younger leaders at all of these schools, and then became a multiplication factor. So I'm so proud of each one of you. I'm grateful for you, and I'm not saying this just because we're at Optimist Club. You know, I love you and I appreciate you and thank you, and I honor your time that you give, not just to this today, but you guys don't even have to come back and give back to the second cohort, and you're doing that monthly for me. I appreciate that and thank you so much. Terry, Karen, back to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks. You guys were just awesome. You can see why I enjoy so much my opportunity to be with them and to learn from them. I learn, I think, more from them than they ever learned from me. So we're going to open it up to some questions right now. Are there some questions you might want to ask? And while you're thinking about it, why don't I ask each of our alumni just to say what year they are in college and what they're, just a quick word about what you're enjoying. Mishi, will you like to start?
Yes. Okay. Hi, Nishi. I'm actually a freshman at Bethel University right now.
Do you know what you're going to study?
Oh yeah. I'm a business major right now with a minor in psychology. But yeah, I'm looking into like probably switching majors possibly, or like within the business. My business major, find out how I can work with like families, or like go like find a position that's right for me.
Karen, can we also ask them what type of leadership, if they're in clubs leading, and what other leaderships that they're now implementing?
Absolutely. Misha, do you have something to add? And then I'll just ask each of you just to pop in.
Yes, that's actually a really good question. Now that I'm in college, it's kind of like hard to find like clubs that are like about leadership and whatnot for like for like especially during like COVID right now. But I am a part of like a BSU group. It's a Black Student Union group where like we do a lot of like presentations and like leadership, qualities. I'm still a part of LIT as well. We help still, like Mr. J spoke about it before. We help on Mondays like give back to like the students. But yeah.
Yeah, and I'll go next too. So I'm also at Bethel, and right now I'm studying English, literature and writing, which makes sense because I talked about how I want to write books. But I'm actually going to be switching to journalism soon because I think that's something I'm more passionate about. But yeah, so I'm gonna be switching to journalism, and I have a business minor, or I'm getting a business minor. You know how. And then as far as doing other leadership things, I am also involved in the Black Student Union. And that has been really, really impactful, especially being at Bethel, which is a predominantly white institution, just to be able to, help people understand the deeper like importance of diversity and seeing cultures outside of our own. And then me and Mishi are also a part of Act 6, which is a leadership program, and we got a leadership scholarship for that. So we do a lot of leadership things with that, and it's also a diversity scholarship. So we get to like be with different cultural groups and just learn more. So we've had a few leadership opportunities, had a lot of speaking in events already, and yeah, I was also a part of Mixed Life, which is like for students that are multicultural because I'm multicultural. And so I've done a few panels for that as well.
And more to come.
Yeah. Well, I'll go next. My name is Yusuf. I consider myself a freshman at Bethel, but technically speaking, I am a senior at the high school. But you know what? I'll be a sophomore next year in college. So I'll just consider myself a freshman. I just use it whenever it benefits me. So I flip and flop whenever it benefits. I'm going into business. I'm really passionate about business, real estate, just kind of numbers. I really want to start my own business and really impact the community. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm right now looking for mentors, especially to kind of help me maneuver the field. Yeah, and leadership positions, I think family, definitely. I mean, I've got a little brother and a little sister, which I definitely did there. I'm on 2 soccer teams, one for my school, one for just like club all year round. LIT. I've also gotten the Act 6 scholarship that we were talking, that Nishi and Talia were talking about. So yeah.
And I'm sorry to interrupt really quickly. So Yusuf wanted me to throw this out there. If there's anybody interested, Yusuf is really interested in business. And if there's anybody in Optimist Club that is willing to take Yusuf under their wing a little bit under the business mentorship, if that's your background, please get a hold of Karen. Karen will get a hold of me, and then I'll arrange that for Yusuf to give you a call if that sparks anybody's passion out there. Okay, he really was. So Jay, could you ask? Could you ask? And I said I sure will. So thank you, Yusuf.
Thank you.
Esther, Jose, who wants to go next?
Jose.
I'll go next. So yeah, I'm also a freshman here at Bethel. I'm a ministry and urban development major. I'm studying to become a youth pastor, and to be a leader in the church. But I'm just in terms of groups right now. I've spent a lot of time with LIT. I've given a lot of my free time towards LIT and a lot of just a lot of my effort and heart. I was I took a break for this semester, but I was with leading in the campus ministry office. And so we did a lot of work and just praying for people and just being creating that community, and being with people, throwing events, having conversations, all that stuff. And so um, constantly leading here on the floor as well. I have a lot of roommates on the floor, and they're all good people. They're all really good people, and we have interesting conversations as well. And so, yeah.
And I'd be amiss, Jose, please talk about your first LIT position that was created.
Yes.
Yes.
Please do that.
So last week I was officially hired to be the LIT Youth Success Coach for the Roseville District. And so I'm officially now working with Mr. J right next to him, and Karen as well. And so I would just be for me it's just a big opportunity to be around more, and it's just to give all my time and my heart to these young students. And so yeah,
He is
I'm
our
excited.
first adult. He's our first adult staff member for LIT. So thank you, Jose. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a freshman at Bethel, and my major is reconciliation and creative writing. I'm in the Asian Student Alliance Club, and I'm working with Suburban Ramsey Family Collaborative.
I'm also at Bethel University, and the scholarship that Talia was talking about, as well as Yusuf and Mishi, I also received that scholarship as well. Some leadership things I'm involved with. I'm in the Nespers worship team, so I lead worship with my freshman peers at our Nelson dorm hall. And I'm also in the Black Student Union, and we've been able to put on some different events here at campus.
Thanks, everybody. One of the questions here is who founded LIT? Jamie, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so 2015, 14 and 15, these students who you see before me and probably 10 other students helped me create it. They kept on coming after school, and then I got a position with the work. Karen helped me create a new position because this leadership development mentoring, where it started to just have its own wheels and take off, that I became a district leadership specialist and really became a founder of this with these guys. I think it's really important to say that, because sometimes when people think of youth work or youth mentoring or youth leadership, we have three terms. We call it where people go, hey, that's really important, but they don't do anything about it. Then there's people who go to youth leadership and kind of go in there and do all the talking to them, and realizing that they don't want to be just talked down to, and so they don't last long, so they leave. And then there's a term we call with leader, and that means everything that you do it together. And I heard their voices on subject matter. I met with their families, and like I said, it was kind of this innovative upstart group, and we just didn't have the money and the funds in the school district to fund an adult team for me, and I didn't want to be a guru and going around and just be the guy. So they really became kind of like my adult team, and like I said, 750 hours a year per student for 7 years. helped create it, and it just kind of grew and grew and grew. So what you're seeing before you, each one of these are absolutely the founders. I've spent an enormous amount of time with them. They've given an enormous amount of time to other young leaders. I know their parents well, been at their homes. I come from a pastoral background. That absolutely helped me. That's what I think pastors should do, not just sit up there in the pulpit and preach, but really be with the people. And that's hours didn't count for me. My wife would have something to say about that, but whatever I could give, when I could give it, they're my family. They really are. They're my family. And to see it grow and to see them make impacts. I don't have children, even though I've been married 24 years. To see them go into schools and help change lives and be change agents. And now not just to younger kids, but to adults, their peers, and to older adults. I'm just a proud leader. So we started it in 2015.
It's been great, and we continue to move forward. I'll take this other last question. It was about a number of the students at Bethel. Is Bethel helping to sponsor the program? Each of these students went after a scholarship, and I think they just rocked it. And part of the reason they rocked these scholarships, so every senior we had last year got a scholarship. It's because of all the leadership development. So when they wrote their papers, when they went for their interviews, they could be very direct about what they wanted and what they needed. And I think they all did just an awesome job. So we were pretty excited that they got scholarships.
Yeah,
Mary Jo? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Really quickly, the Act 6 scholarship, if you've never heard of it, a lot of scholarships are based on grades, but this one they based on grades and leadership development and contribution. So they looked at those two, and it was a no-brainer for all of them. It was 750 hours a year for 6 to 7 years, and giving back to their community and their own leadership development. That wasn't easy. And here's a big thing. I just want to say this. I'm sorry to get on my little soapbox, but this is really important. When you talk about students and education systems, we will spend so much time giving them teachers to help them educationally with a subject. But if their self-image is down here and we give them 80 hours of time to help them in a certain subject, and that their success rate goes up here for a while, their self-image is here, will literally pull down their success again. That's why you have to be able to start mentoring and getting mentoring back into the school systems and helping people with their heart, soul, and mind. And once they start valuing themselves, they'll start valuing their grades. And entities that used to be there, being a pastor, like youth groups, Boys and Girls Club, YMCAs, those entities are not there like they used to be. They're not. And so that's why we have to look at our school systems differently and how we're giving emotionally healthy leadership to them. So thank you.
So Mary Jo, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the final, and you can ask the final question.
Well, I'm honored to be able to do that. But first of all, just how grateful I am to all of you for your talk today, but your contributions to the community. I myself am a graduate of Ramsey, which is the former Roseville area high school. And just want to say thank you for giving back. You give me hope, you give me inspiration, and I'm optimistic about a future that includes you all and the people that you're mentoring. I am hoping that this is getting to be something that more and more students get to participate in at our high school. So say at Roseville area high school, how many students get to participate in this, and how do we get it to be every student? I mean, I'm guessing this is a opt-in program, and I heard Superintendent-elect Jenny Lake speak this morning, and she said we want more social emotional learning. We want all of these these leadership programs, and I'm grateful to hear that. How do we get this to be a part of what more students get to benefit from?
So I think oh, go ahead, Jamie.
No, this is really important because I think this gets under-missed, because anytime you start an innovative leadership development program, the stories get missed and even some of the work. is people don't, this is why it's so important for me to say this again. When you crockpot leaders like this, it looks like they're the only ones getting the time.
Right.
But that investment went into them, so then they could go into the schools and start mentoring kids. So it wasn't just me going in to each school. And if you multiply that, we counted there's over 250 students that they had mentored in the LIT program at 6 different schools. So sometimes when that narrative has always been hard to change within Roseville, that it's just 20 students. It's not. That's my investment into them and their investment into younger students. So it really multiplied. But money-wise, there was already long-standing programs like Unity Center and Friendship Connection. Yeah. So, you know, getting money for the program was always the challenge because I was only the only paid staff. Jose, and you were part of that, Mary Jo, Jose getting our first adult LIT youth success coach. Now I can leave him at a school and then he can really be there at that time at Central Park we're looking at. And then he can, everything he's learned now, he can build even the stronger foundation but our goal is that what we'd have, we could have 7 youth success coach representing LIT and helping with the program at each school. And starting from there, we can rock this community into a leadership development revolution. But they have been doing that, and it just hasn't been caught enough in stories. They've already been doing that on their own time, but it always looks at as they're just the ones. And Mary Jo, I'm going to say this again, that is just not accurate. It's 250 students. I could bring them all here. They've invested and influenced and younger LITs that are there on that part. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, well, I appreciate, Jamie, all that you're doing and all that Karen's doing. And I get the multiplier effect. It's phenomenal. And that's absolutely worth it. And I want to keep multiplying it, I guess.
Hey, listen, we'll take a few more of those Roseville grants.
Yeah, I want to keep, helping make that happen. You're the amazing people that are doing it.
So I'd also say we did apply for one grant, but right now lots of grants are being applied for, and unfortunately, they told us not this year. So we are looking for some grants where we can bring back each one of those students to work maybe 15 hours a week to really help us, because the amount of time investment and amount that they have learned would take us several years to train a new staff member. So why not keep this ball rolling? So I know we had a really long and good discussion today. So these are the young people too that last year, as COVID hit, were going to come speak to you. And the first time we couldn't have a meeting, these were the young folks that were going to come and speak. And so they're still with us, and we appreciate your time, what you heard today and listening. And I encourage each of you to think about something new that you learned today from these young adults and share it with another adult, because this is how we're going to keep things moving forward and people understanding that we do have strong young adults who will lead us well in the future. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate how attentive everyone was. And students, I love you always. And thank you so much for giving up your time to do some more volunteer work with us today. So be well, everyone. Thank you.
So I'd like to thank everyone too. This was wonderful. It's a wonderful program. I had some other comments, but we're running a little short on time. But I will let you know that we're going to get you a copy of the Optimist Creed for you to have to continue to bring out the optimism that you have in your hearts, in your passion, and everything you do. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and we wish you the very best. I also will challenge you that if you'd like to start an Optimist Club at your university or college, please get a hold of Karen or myself, and we will help you start a Optimist Club in your school so that you can help other students gain the kind of professionalism, the kind of insight that you have on leadership and development. I think it's fabulous. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Let's give a big round of applause. Thank you much to everyone.